This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, we want to introduce you to our panel of experts. Sitting in for Chris Fitzsimon, who is in Ireland on a family reunion, Cash Michaels from the Carolinian in the Wilmington Journal, former legislator Gene Arnold, Peg O'Connell, and John Hood, a syndicated columnist, soon to be releasing his new book on Governor Jim Martin. Well, welcome to this week's show. We want to talk about where the state budget stands, the Medicaid revelation that shows we owe more than we thought, and we're going to ask whether the governor broke his promise on abortion and what it might mean for his reelection. Let's get started. It's now apparent our state Senate was optimistic in their promise to pass a budget this week. And it's obvious that there were disagreements with both the House and Senate caucuses, judging by their work output. The Senate late Wednesday afternoon released their finance plan, but Gene Arnold, every session seems to have a different tone, a different flavor. You've been involved in a number of them. How would you judge this particular session to date?
It's kind of like a new person training to be an airplane pilot. It's hours and hours of tedious boredom interrupted by moments of stark terror. And this General Assembly seems to follow the leadership more than any that I have seen. We used to let those who had a particular cause do the press releases, etc. This is all done by the leadership, and it seems to be the way everyone wants it.
And all the decisions are made in caucus.
Absolutely.
And then announced.
Yes.
Well, the Senate came out with their finance package, tax plan, late Wednesday afternoon, as I said, John. No real surprises there, but there were some interesting revelations and some changes made that perhaps might be worthy of talking about. One of them include tax cuts for both corporations and individuals.
Yes, well, the corporate tax cut, part of it is just putting into statute directly scheduled corporate income tax cuts that are already on the books that would already have happened anyway. They're just clarifying that, so that's not really a net change. But there is a change in the calculation of the state corporate income tax towards counting only sales for companies in each state rather than in North Carolina balancing
out. Called the single sales factor.
So that'll have an effect on the tax burden for corporations over time, helping some corporations but not all. As for the personal income tax, that's really the major action in the bill by far in terms of the dollar amounts. It doesn't sound like a lot. They're going to take the personal income tax rate from 5.75, the current rate, to 5.5. So it's a 0.25 percentage point reduction in the rate. Of course, now there's only one rate. And they'll increase the standard deductions for all taxpayers in North Carolina by $250 a year over 5 years. That's actually a tremendous amount of money. I think the second or third year of this tax cut, we're talking $600 million or more. Now, the offset of that, there are some things, and primarily you're looking at the sales tax, where they're proposing a kind of an iteration off of 2013. You may remember that in 2013, there was some people who argued, let's dramatically expand the scope of the sales tax. That was opposed by a lot of businesses that don't currently collect it. So the pushback on that convinced them to focus only on businesses that already sell goods that are taxable, but those businesses sell services that aren't taxable, so it's not a big paperwork burden. So we're talking about installation services, veterinary services, pet stores,
advertising.
Yeah.
Yes. Peg, one of the big items in this was refunds that are given to nonprofit organizations, and it primarily affects the hospitals. They've changed the sales tax exclusion from $666 million down to $14.8 million by the year 2020, which means that a large institution like a hospital has been eligible for up to $45 million in sales tax refunds. It's going to drop down to $1 million. Was this being done sort of to get to hospitals or what?
Well, you know, the hospitals have not been the great power sources that they had been in the past, where what they said went. So I think that's part of it. I think it's also an attempt just to put their hands on more money, probably from people who can't afford to give it. And also, I think what it is it's demonstrating, it speaks to me that it says perhaps our not-for-profits are not as important as they were in the past.
Senator Harry Brown's plan to redistribute the way sales tax are distributed across the state is included in this plan. Previously, 75 cents out of each sales tax dollar collected went back to the county where the sale was made. 25 cents went to a statewide distribution. Now it's almost flip-flopped cash. It's going to be 20 cents going to the county that makes the sale, 80% being distributed across the rest of the state. This supposedly being done to help rural counties. You think it will?
Do you hear that screaming? Those are the county managers and boards of commissions, and it's saying, what are you doing to us? I mean, keep in mind, this legislature, this Republican-led legislature, has done a lot to, I started to use the wrong word, to take revenues from municipalities. I started to use the R word, and now look what they're doing with this redistribution thing. So now that means in these respective counties, they may have to raise taxes, property taxes, and the like to make up for the difference. So the question is, what are they doing?
Interesting point, because they complained for years about redistributing the wealth so far as the income tax plans were concerned, and what the Democrats were doing. Now they're doing the same thing.
They're doing it in spades. It's
well,
so
to be fair, I have some doubts about this plan, but to be fair, they're not arguing it's a redistribution. They are arguing that it is a redistribution. In other words, people who live in the rural areas will go to a city or to a market town like a Hickory or a Greenville or a Fayetteville or somewhere and spend money. But they're from Duplin County. They're from Alexander County. The argument is it ought to go back to where the people are from. Right. It's not actually redistributing money from people who live in Raleigh to people who live in Greenville. That's not the argument.
But the big counties and the towns, and they build the infrastructure.
Yeah, but they say only 10 communities will actually lose sales tax
but it's the 10 with all the people in them.
Gene, one of the things that was interesting was that the governor had been trying to get some more money for JDIG and for industrial incentives. They put in a high yield plan for organizations that were going to invest $750 million and create 2,000 jobs. Is this done primarily for automobile manufacturing plants? That's a pretty high threshold.
Every legislator in South Carolina wakes up in the morning and says, keep North Carolina doing exactly what they've been doing. It had to be that. We can't lose another automobile plant to South Carolina, and there's one coming up. And we've already lost 2. And I think the heat that they got from that is being shown here. But Rucho is still working with a skeleton trying to put meat onto this thing, and it's a hit-or-miss project. So I don't know where we ever are going to end up with this, and I don't think they know either.
Well, as it turns out, this was not voted on in committee. It was not voted on the floor. So obviously it's something that we will be talking about in weeks to come, along with the Senate budget. If you like NC Spin and you want more, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or NC Spin on Facebook. We've got exclusive video footage you can't get anywhere else. Plus, you can read perspectives from opinion leaders across our state. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, or at NC Spin Tweets. When we come back, the other shoe drops regarding Medicaid.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
98% of farms are family farms. Families that believe in values like hard work, faith, and integrity. Farmers care for their crops, land, and animals because it's their passion and it's the right thing to do. They take pride in raising healthy, affordable food for your family and their own. Their livelihood depends on it. At Farm Bureau, we believe in farmers, their values, and their way of life.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
Every year, North Carolina patients undergo 635,000 same-day surgeries. 72% of these surgeries are performed in our highest-cost hospital facilities, adding as much as $2,000 to every procedure. The state's outdated Certificate of Need law prevents competition from lower-cost, higher-quality same-day surgery centers, inflating healthcare costs and limiting patient choice. Tell state lawmakers it's time to lower healthcare costs now. It's time to make a simple fix to an outdated law, increasing patient choice and lowering healthcare costs now. You can help. Visit reformconnow.com and tell lawmakers it's time for a simple fix to an outdated law. It's time to lower healthcare costs now.
We now return to NC Spin.
As we said earlier, one of the reasons the Senate budget was delayed because of news released last week that payments for dual eligibles, that's those people that get Medicare and Medicaid, had not been paid to doctors and hospitals for nearly 2 years. In 2014, we were told Medicaid was operating within its budget and, in fact, had shown a slight surplus. Now we're learning NCtracks, the computer payment program, wasn't tracking or paying these providers for more than 2 years. Question one to John, do we have any estimate as to how much is owed? Why was this so late being revealed?
Well, we don't have a hard number, though I think it's fair to say it's in the tens of millions. As for the actual source of the problem, it happened in mid-2013. It was not a technological snafu. It was not a clerical error. It was a conscious, they thought that they were justified in paying the payments that were paid. So this was a conscious decision on their part, defended against criticism, but ultimately is proven, according to the feds, to be an underpayment. So it's not an oversight. It was something they thought they were justified in doing that turned out not to be the case.
So this wasn't a case where DHHS knew that they were making a mistake and didn't report it to us?
There was a dispute about it. DHHS believed they were in the right. They proved to be incorrect.
So how did we find out? The news actually was leaked out of the legislature, as I understand it. They weren't happy.
The Senate is going to include Medicaid reforms in its budget, and you can draw your own
conclusions from that. Well, you know, what you said at the beginning, Tom, is not exactly. There were payments being made. The Medicaid Division of Medical Assistance sets a policy. But when they instructed NCtracks how to implement the policy, that's where the breakdown came. And then when people started complaining, they kept going back and looking and said, no, we think it's right. No, we think it's right. And there were so many things going on with NCtracks because it was a new system after 40 years. The reason it took so long is it's like peeling an onion. You know, they got a lot of the really, really big things squared away. And now this is one of those things that's at the core of the onion.
So this isn't a case where there was negligence per se, it was just an honest dispute?
I would say an honest dispute with a kind of a screw up at the end.
I think we normally call that bad judgment.
Yeah.
Well, but it was blamed on the NCtracks program, and apparently that did not have anything to do with it.
No, they were misinstructed.
It was the triggering event, but it wasn't. It was not a technological problem.
I think the question that the taxpayers in North Carolina want to know is why didn't, when this was discovered, when the feds decided this, why was this leaked from the legislature rather than DHHS coming to the people and telling us about it themselves?
Well, you know, I mean, this is just horrible timing, and I think John is right because the Senate wants to include Medicaid reform. DHHS is making the case to the General Assembly, and I think, honestly, we are getting in front of the problems we're having in Medicaid, and they're trying to make sure that their credibility stays intact. And
but Cash, isn't the first rule in crisis management get your bad news out first?
Well, I think what no one's saying.
Don't let anybody else tell your bad stories.
I think what no one else is saying at the table is that Secretary Voss has been hammered, you know, since she's been in office, you know, for a lot of mishaps over there. And I guess this would have really, you know, tipped the iceberg.
But isn't it worse with us finding out after the fact than it would have been if she'd have come to us and said, hey, folks.
Hardworking journalists like moi love this. But other than that, you know, it's horrible for the administration.
Well, and there may have been a plan, and somebody scooped her.
All right, Gene. So meanwhile, the House comes up with their new reform proposal for Medicaid, and it involves what are called PLEs, or provider-led entities, which is another form, I guess, of the accountable care organizations. Did they do this to try to scoop the Senate? Because we're told Medicaid reform is going to be in the Senate budget.
I don't know why they did it, and it bothers me on who is determining what health care I need. And the last person I want is my insurance agent telling me what drugs I can take and what I can and cannot get paid for. I just had an operation, and it was $105,000 worth of medical bill. I don't want to pay any of that.
And that brain surgery really was.
That was low.
I'm sorry. You just keep tossing me the softballs, and I just. All right. So the Senate is going to be coming out with Medicaid reform. Do we have any clue as to what's going to be in it, John?
Yes, I think it'll be closer to that model being discussed. That is a hybrid that includes accountable care organizations and managed care organizations. At least when they came up with PLE or whatever, at least they weren't tempted to call it provider-led organizations or PLO. That might have been more of a PR
one
problem.
version of one of the proposals. It was PLO until they realized it was a problem.
Bad judgment.
Yeah,
bad judgment. Okay, after these messages, we're going to come back and talk about abortion promises.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Where do you go when you need to know? ANC makes it easy for you to get the information you need to make well-informed public policy decisions. Our members are industry leaders who are ready to share their industry-specific insights with you. Want to hear both sides of the story? ANC members can tell you. Just use the ANC member directory as your guide or call us directly. ANC members have the knowledge, expertise, and perspective you need to create public policies that are good for North Carolina. We are ready for your call.
I was asked by someone months ago, isn't Medicaid in North Carolina broken? And my answer was no. There are parts of it that need to be improved. There are parts that need to be changed. But the whole system's not broken. There are a lot of things that are working very well. What is working well is that we have a physician-led, physician-guided team effort. It's built on the concept of physicians having medical homes, patients having medical homes. And that system that we've created in North Carolina has done wonderful work. It has saved money, it's improved quality, and we have data that demonstrates that. That's what we need to retain, that's what we need to build upon. We don't need to replace that.
North Carolina's Family Physicians supports Medicaid reform that builds on our state's foundation of medical homes. Our NChealthcare.com.
Does your North Carolina business or organization have a story to tell? I'm Richard Campbell, and at Carolina Broadcasting and Publishing, we help tell stories that connect you to the people who will respond. We take the time to understand our clients' needs and what makes them unique. We craft their stories through the efficient use of words, images, and videos that resonate with their desired audience. We also know that a good story is incomplete without a call to action. On video, on air, online, and in print, from concept to final production, no one can help tell your story more effectively or affordably than we can. For special introductory offers, visit carolinabroadcasting.com or call 919-832-1416. Again, that's carolinabroadcasting.com. Let us help tell your story today.
We now return to NC Spin.
On last week's show, we talked about two vetoes Governor McCrory had issued and speculated about whether he would do the same on the abortion access bill that was passed. Well, he later announced he's not going to veto that 72-hour waiting restriction for abortion. Critics, however, immediately jumped on him for breaking a campaign promise he made in his 2008 campaign. McCrory was asked whether what, if any, restrictions to abortion he would support as governor. He responded, none. protesters say this definitely is a restriction. The governor says it isn't. Peg, what do you think about whether he broke his promise? More importantly, how's it going to affect his 2016 reelection campaign?
Well, I think if semantically he can say, I'm not in the legislature, I didn't do this, and I didn't encourage them to do it. But I think if you're intellectually honest about it, he did break his promise. He broke it last year, and he's breaking it again. I think it will impact him in the coming election because there are a lot of people who voted for Pat McCrory thinking he was a moderate, middle-of-the-road Republican, and on many of these social issues, he keeps tilting right. And I think he's going to pay a price for it when it comes to November.
Well, he'd already vetoed 2 bills, got overridden on one. The jury's still out on the second one. Do you think this was just an effort to try to appease the legislature, Gene?
No, I think this was the way he actually felt about it. I think he's starting to get some advice from his team, albeit not the best in the world from what I can see. But no, I think he was sincere with it.
John, one of the things that was interesting regarding abortion, Associated Press released a study that showed that nationwide the number of abortions have dropped, but in North Carolina they've dropped by 26% since 2010. To what can we attribute this decrease?
Well, because it's a national trend and different states are pursuing different policies, you can't attribute it all to public policy, though that's certainly part of it in a state like North Carolina. There's a national trend. There's a longer-term trend. Also, if you look at the polling, there's some interesting differences between young people and middle-aged people and older people on this issue. So I think there is somewhat of a cultural lean against abortion that wasn't around a generation ago. I think there have been public policies that have affected the availability of abortions in a number of states, including North Carolina. Again, not restricting the right per se, but affecting abortion clinics. There have been enforcements of parental consent laws. If there were states that were still funding abortion, that's been gone after. There have been waiting periods, some of these other policies. So it's a combination of cultural factors, social factors that are underlying the entire drop nationwide, and also public policy in some states.
I thought it was interesting, Cash. No sooner had the governor announced he wasn't going to veto this bill than Roy Cooper, who is presumed to be the Democratic candidate running for governor, used this as a fundraising measure, saying the governor broke his promise. He's anti-women. Send me $25 and help me in this effort. How successful do you think that was?
Let's face it, don't forget, the governor, this is the same Pat McCrory, who, when he had protesters outside the governor's mansion, brought them cookies, you know, to kind of placate them, so to speak, or play with them, or whatever else. And so now he comes and does this, breaks his promise. They're furious. So Cooper made the right choice. I did want to add, though, that I think what may also be adding to this lowering of the abortion rate is also the lowering of the teenage pregnancy rate in the nation as well, and in North Carolina.
Yeah. All right. So I asked about how it was going to affect the governor. How is it going to impact the 2016 elections? Will people have forgotten about it and again vote their pocketbooks? The economy will be the big issue in 2016, or do you think this is going to have legs and be an issue?
I don't think it'll be an issue. I think abortion is always a hot topic. I think the economy will still be the issue when the election rolls around.
Interesting. Okay, after these messages, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Hi, I'm Linda Loveland. I want the best for my kids. Feeding them foods they like within my budget is a priority. But what do we really know about these foods? North Carolina farmers and food experts give you a website to find it all. FeedTheDialogueNC.com, a place where moms like you and me can learn more about the foods we eat and the farmers that feed us. Check it out. Add your input and help feed the dialogue. Let's talk food at FeedTheDialogueNC.com.
Medicaid system is not a perfect system. There are things that could be changed, but there's a lot that's going well with the system. Community Care of North Carolina is in place. It's a team of nurses, advisors, caregivers who help us out. We want to call and say, look, I've got Miss So-and-so here. She needs to have her weight checked each day because she's got congestive heart failure. Can you send one of those monitors out to the house and keep an eye on this and let me know if her weight goes up too much, because if it does, she's retaining fluid and she's going to be back in the hospital. We work together with them. That's a great system. It saves a lot of money is proven to work. We're not opposed to changing the things that need to be changed, but let's not throw out everything that we worked for the past 15 to 20 years.
North Carolina's Family Physicians supports Medicaid reform that builds on our state's foundation of medical homes. Our NChealthcare.com.
We now return to NC Spin.
Now comes time for the part of the show that I enjoy, the time when we ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Cash Michaels, I'll start with you.
Last month in May, the former executive director of the North Carolina League of Municipalities, Ellis Hankins, announced that he has seen enough and he will now make himself a candidate for office. Now, he
didn't say what, though.
He didn't say what office, though, but I'm assuming that he's so fed up with what he's seeing in the legislature that he very well may vie for one of those seats there, most likely a House seat.
Fed up because of the way they're treating municipalities or just in general?
He just feels that North Carolina, the North Carolina we knew, is not the North Carolina we know, and that is too much is going on, too much is happening to the university system, too much is happening by way of tax reform and policies, and he's going to put himself out there.
Okay. Gene, tell us something we don't know.
Tom, underage drinking is becoming a real problem in North Carolina. There are 61,000 permits issued for C-stores and other outlets to sell alcohol. And the average age that a child starts drinking now is 14 years of age.
Wow.
And in North Carolina, statistically, 2 children die each week from alcohol-related homicides or accidents.
Wow. Interesting. Well, it's appalling.
Well, that's why they have a program now to talk it out.
Right.
Trying to get parents to acknowledge.
Any evidence it's working?
Just started.
All right. Peg, tell us something we don't know.
So 2 weeks ago, the Department of Cultural Resources erected a highway marker in Farmville, North Carolina, to honor four-star General, Marine General Alan Howell Turnage, who led the efforts of the Pacific during the Second World War and oversaw the battles of Guadalcanal, Bougainville, and Guam.
Wow.
Yeah,
how about that?
Cool.
Yeah. All right, John, tell us something we don't know.
So for months now, there's been an impasse between the North Carolina House and Senate about the presidential primary in North Carolina, whether it will be placed in February, thus making it early, but penalizing the state in the number of delegates to the National Convention in 2016, or moving the primary to March. I believe now the impasse is about to be resolved. I think that the legislature will clarify that the primary will be held in early March. Still an early primary date, but one that saves North Carolina's delegate count.
All right, I got a last question for each of you. It needs to be very short, don't have much time. Tell me when the budget for North Carolina will finally be passed.
June 30th.
June 30th.
June 30th.
All right.
I think it might bleed into early July.
Peg, what's your prediction?
August 1st.
August 1st. Cash?
August 2nd.
I don't know, is August 1st?
I'm saying get the Halloween decorations out. They might be here until then. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read our weekly column, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com. And we hope you'll join NC Spin next week when we're going to have a very special interview with Governor Pat McCrory, who's going to respond to the Senate budget and talk about more issues of interest to North Carolina. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.